Chapter 1, An Evening of Joy. The golden light of the late afternoon spilled through the tall glass windows of the banquet hall, turning every surface into a canvas of warm reflections. Chandeliers glimmered overhead, scattering 1,000 fragments of light onto the polished floor. Guests moved about in soft clusters, laughter blending with the gentle notes of a string quartet tucked neatly into the corner. The air was scented with fresh roses, jasmine, and the faint aroma of butter from the desserts waiting in the next room. It was, at least to anyone looking in from the outside, the perfect wedding. At the far end of the hall, a tall man in a dark navy suit stood near the stage, his suit perfectly pressed, his shoes gleaming, his smile carrying the unmistakable mix of joy and nerves. This was Michael Harris, the groom. At 51, Michael carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen his share of storms in life but had finally found his harbor. Today was meant to be the day he anchored there for good. He kept glancing toward the grand double doors at the back of the room, the ones through which his bride would enter. His fingers adjusted his tie every few minutes, not because it needed fixing, but because his hands needed something to do. "Big day, huh?" his best man, Robert, said, patting him on the shoulder. Michael chuckled softly. "Biggest in a long time." Meanwhile, near the side of the hall, away from the chatter and the clinking glasses, sat a boy, about 15 years old. His name was Ethan, Michael's only son. He wasn't dressed like most teenage boys would choose to be, his light gray suit fit perfectly, his hair neatly combed. Still, his posture told a different story. His shoulders slouched slightly, his eyes darting between the floor and the guests, and his fingers drummed an uneven rhythm against the arm of the chair. Ethan had smiled politely when people greeted him, but there was something hollow in it. If anyone had looked closely, they would have noticed the tension in his jaw, the way his gaze sometimes flicked toward the door, not with the eager anticipation of the rest of the room, but with something else. At the center of the hall, the floral arrangement stood tall and extravagant, soft white lilies intertwined with deep crimson roses. Gold-trimmed chairs faced the stage where a delicate arch of flowers framed the spot where the vows would be spoken. The hall hummed with conversation, old friends catching up, relatives meeting after years apart, co-workers sharing light jokes. The string quartet shifted to a sweeter, slower tune. The master of ceremonies, a cheerful woman in her 40s, adjusted the microphone and announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, we are just a few minutes away from the ceremony. Please take your seats." There was a polite shuffle as people moved toward their places. Michael stepped closer to the stage, his heart thumping harder now. He had been through this in his mind a dozen times, how she would walk in, how their eyes would meet, how the world would fade except for her. Across the room, Ethan sat still, his gaze fixed now on his father. His lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't blink for several seconds. From the back, the faint rustle of fabric could be heard, the kind of sound that makes everyone in a wedding hall turn toward the entrance. Conversation softened. The music swelled ever so slightly. The double doors remained closed, but anticipation had already settled like a hush across the crowd. Michael's heart leapt. Any second now. Ethan's heart, on the other hand, pounded for an entirely different reason. He had been quiet all morning, barely touching his breakfast, ignoring the light-hearted teasing from Robert and his father's friends. No one knew the weight he carried in his chest, a truth he had discovered only days ago. A truth that made every laugh in this room feel misplaced, every flower here feel like it was part of a set for a scene that should never happen. From his seat, Ethan could see his father's expression, the way Michael kept smiling, oblivious to the storm building only a few feet away. Ethan's throat felt tight. The thought kept pressing into his mind, if I don't say it now, it will be too late. The MC's voice came again. "All right, folks, it's the moment we've all been waiting for." All eyes turned to the back. Michael's breath caught. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. The large doors opened just a few inches, and the faintest glimpse of a white gown peeked through. A few women in the crowd sighed in admiration. Cameras were lifted. A child in the front row whispered, "She's here." Michael straightened, his smile widening. Ethan's pulse roared in his ears. The gap in the doors widened, and the figure behind them began to step forward. And then, in that brief, suspended moment where the first note of the bridal march began to play, Ethan realized there was no more time to think. No more weighing the consequences. No more deciding if it was the right moment. This was the moment. He took a deep breath, his voice sharp enough to cut through the music, the murmurs, and the rising tide of excitement. "Dad!" he shouted. The music stumbled as the pianist's fingers hit the wrong key. A collective gasp rippled through the hall. Heads turned, eyes locking on the boy who had just broken the spell of the perfect wedding. Ethan stood now, his chair scraping against the floor. His chest rose and fell quickly. Every guest was staring, but he was looking only at his father. Michael's smile faltered. "Ethan." The bride, frozen just behind the door, didn't move another step. Ethan's voice was steadier this time, but louder, commanding. "Don't marry her." The words didn't just hang in the air, they slammed into the silence, and the room felt suddenly heavier. This chapter ends right here, with that single, impossible sentence breaking through what had moments ago been the picture of happiness. Chapter 2, The Sudden Outburst. The words hung in the air like a crack of thunder. Don't marry her. At first, it seemed as though no one quite believed they'd heard it right. The musicians, frozen mid-note, looked at each other uncertainly. The guests sat in stunned stillness, their expressions caught somewhere between shock and curiosity. It was the kind of silence that carried weight, not emptiness, but the pressure of 1,000 unspoken questions. Michael blinked at his son. His mind raced, trying to understand what had just happened. This wasn't a child throwing a tantrum in a grocery store. This was his 15-year-old son, in the middle of the most important day of his life, telling him not to go through with it, in front of everyone. "Ethan," Michael said, his voice low but firm, "what are you doing?" Ethan's face was pale, but his eyes burned with determination. His fists remained clenched at his sides. "Dad, please. You can't marry her." A ripple of whispers began to weave through the crowd. An elderly woman in the second row leaned toward the man next to her. "Did you hear what he said?" "I heard," the man replied, not looking away from the scene. From the back of the room, the bride still stood just inside the double doors. Her hands tightened around her bouquet, knuckles whitening. She didn't step forward, but she didn't retreat either. Her smile, the one she'd been practicing for weeks in the mirror, faltered, just slightly. Michael stepped down from the small stage, closing some of the distance between himself and Ethan. His shoes clicked softly on the polished floor. "Son," he said under his breath, "this isn't the time." "It's the only time," Ethan shot back, his voice trembling but loud enough for several rows of guests to hear. "If I wait even one more minute, it'll be too late." Robert, the best man, moved toward them, his hand raised as though to calm things down. "Hey, let's not make a scene, all right? We can talk about whatever this is later." "No." Ethan's voice cut through Robert's like a blade. The sharpness of it made the entire room tense again. "Later will be too late. You don't know who she really is." Gasps. Someone in the back muttered, "Oh my God." Michael's brows drew together, his voice now edged with frustration. "Ethan, stop. We're not doing this here." But Ethan took a step forward, closing the gap completely, until he was standing right in front of his father. "You think you know her," he said, his voice low now, almost a whisper, though the microphone nearby caught it and carried it to the farthest corners of the room. "You don't." From her place at the back, the bride's breathing quickened. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, her eyes darting to the side door, the one that led to the parking lot. Her maid of honor leaned closer and whispered, "What's going on?" The bride didn't answer. Michael opened his mouth to speak, but Ethan's voice rose again before he could. "Dad, she's lying to you. She's not who she says she is." The words were louder now, more insistent, charged with something that felt like desperation. Ethan's shoulders were squared, his eyes fixed, and for the first time in his life, he was not backing down from his father. All around them, the wedding guests were no longer simply watching, they were leaning forward, hooked, the way people can't look away from a car crash. Some were recording on their phones. Others were whispering theories. Michael's heart pounded in his ears. He felt the heat of dozens of stares on his back. "Ethan, whatever you think you know." "I don't think," Ethan interrupted, his voice slicing the air. "I know." The bride took one small step backward toward the door. A few people noticed. A murmur spread. Robert tried again to diffuse the tension. "Let's just." Ethan turned his head sharply toward Robert, eyes flashing. "Stay out of this." And then, without another word, Ethan reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. Every eye followed his hand. He pulled out his phone and held it tightly, as if it contained the kind of truth that could burn everything down. Michael stared at it, a cold dread starting to creep into his chest. Chapter 3, The Shocking Accusation. Ethan's thumb hovered over the screen like it weighed 100 pounds. For a breathless second, he didn't speak. He just looked at his father, as if asking silently for permission to detonate the truth. "Say it," Michael finally managed. His voice was tight. "If you've got something to say it to me. Not to the room." Ethan swallowed. "I'm saying it to you." He turned the phone so the nearest guests could see, then lifted it high enough for his father. On the screen was a photograph, the bride, hair darker, makeup lighter, but unmistakably her, standing in a courthouse lobby. Next to her, a man with a buzz cut and a tired smile. Their hands were clasped. Between them, a clerk held up a marriage certificate for the camera like it was a prize. A ripple went through the hall, gasps, whispered "Oh my gods," the skitter of someone's fork hitting a plate. The quartet's cellist finally set the bow down. Michael didn't blink. "What am I looking at?" Ethan zoomed in. County clerk's office, Everside. 2 years ago. Robert edged closer, eyes narrowing at the image. "Could be photoshopped," he muttered, hope clinging to the words more than belief. "It's not," Ethan said. His voice was steadier now, like speaking the first piece had unlocked the rest. He swiped to a second photo, the same pair, outside, sunlight on their faces, a ring glittering on her hand. The courthouse seal was visible on a banner behind them. Michael's jaw tightened. Her name. Ethan's thumb tapped the screen again. A scanned PDF appeared, grainy but legible. Marriage certificate. He read the names aloud. Scarlet Lane, and Aaron Pike. From the back, the bride, Scarlet, finally moved. One step in. One step out. As though a tide was pulling her from both sides. Her bouquet sagged, petals loosening and falling like white confetti that shouldn't be falling yet. A woman in the third row covered her mouth. She's already married. Ethan turned to face the room for the first time. She didn't get divorced. Scarlett's head snapped up. That's not true. The words were too quick, too firm. Michael exhaled, the sound harsh in the microphone. Scarlet. She cut him a look, pleading. Michael, listen to me. Ethan didn't wait. He opened a text thread. Messages. Screenshots. He scrolled to a short video, clicked play. The audio was tinny but clear, a conversation recorded in a small room. A woman's voice, Scarlet's, was saying, "We'll wait it out. He'll be inside for a while. No one has to know." The room tilted. People knew they shouldn't be listening but leaned in anyway, because that's what people do when a secret crawls out into the light. Scarlet took 2 swift steps forward, the train of her dress whispering over the floor. That was taken out of context. Her smile had disappeared. What replaced it wasn't anger, it was calculation. "You don't know what you're doing, Ethan." He held her gaze. "I know exactly what I'm doing." Michael looked from one to the other, the world shrinking to their triangle. "Why didn't you tell me you were married?" Scarlet's throat moved as she swallowed. "I was going to. I tried, but..." "When?" Ethan asked. "Before the cake. After the vows." "I filed for an annulment," she said, too fast. "It's complicated." Ethan swiped again, pulling up a court portal result he'd saved offline. No record in Everside County. No record in Franklin County. No record anywhere she's lived in the last 5 years. He glanced at his father. "I checked." Robert let out a low whistle he hadn't meant to make. Someone else murmured, "How did he even find all this?" Ethan didn't say that it had taken him 3 sleepless nights, a forum rabbit hole, and a call to a librarian who knew how to dig. He didn't say that he'd wanted to be wrong so badly his stomach hurt. Scarlet's eyes flashed. "That's harassment." "It's called protecting my dad," Ethan said. Michael's voice softened, almost broke. "Why, Scarlet?" She didn't answer him. Not directly. She looked at the crowd instead, then at the exit, calculating routes. Her maid of honor drifted a step away, as if distance could make the association fade. The MC hovered by the mic with a brittle smile that said, "I was not hired for this." The string quartet pretended to tune. Ethan pulled up one last item, the one he thought might be overkill but brought anyway. A scanned intake record, Aaron Pike, State Correctional Facility, commitment date, 18 months ago. Offense, aggravated fraud. There was a note at the bottom, a visitor log. Scarlet Lane, 4 visits. Michael stared at the screen for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet enough that the tech raised the mic volume without thinking. "You visited him 4 times. Scarlet's fingers tightened around the bouquet until the stems creaked. "He needed help." "I'm not a monster, Michael." He was in trouble. "And you were his wife," Ethan said. "I was separating," she snapped, then tried to rein it back into something softer. "We were over. We were done long before I met you. You know me. You know my heart." Michael rubbed at his jaw, like he was trying to wake himself up. "Do I?" Scarlet took a step toward him, pulling herself taller in the dress, finding her wedding day poise and wielding it like armor. "I didn't tell you because I was afraid," she said, letting her voice tremble just enough. "Afraid you'd see me as damaged. Afraid you'd walk away from the best thing that's ever happened to me." She looked at Ethan, and there it was, the turn. "And I was afraid your son would make sure you did." Gasps again, smaller this time, more like sharp intakes of air. She went on, eyes glossy now. "He never wanted this wedding. From the beginning, he shut me out. He looked for reasons to hate me." Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. For a beat, the room considered her version. People want romance to win, it makes the world simpler. He steadied himself. I wanted my dad happy, he said, and the steadiness surprised even him. I wanted that so much I ignored all the weird little things. The calls you took in the hallway. The cash you asked him to hold for a friend. The way you never let me take a picture of you without checking it first. He paused, breathing in, breathing out. But then the letter came to the house. The one from the prison, addressed to Mrs. Aaron Pike. You told the mailman there was no one by that name. Scarlet's eyes flicked, just enough to betray a flinch. You're 15. You don't understand how messy adult lives can be. Michael's voice firmed. He understands the difference between truth and omission. Silence again, denser now. The kind that arrives after impact. Scarlet softened, tried a new angle. Michael, we can talk about this. Privately. Send everyone home, we'll go upstairs, and I'll explain everything. I should have told you sooner, but we're here now. Don't let a technicality ruin our future. Ethan stared at her. A technicality? She didn't break eye contact. A paperwork issue. A marriage, he said. To someone else. Scarlet's smile finally cracked for good. The bouquet slipped in her grip and hit the floor with a dull, wet sound. Petals scattered under the soles of polished shoes. The image would stick with people later, the white flowers on the gleaming floor, stepping stones of what-ifs. Michael took a half-step back, as if the stage itself had tilted. He looked past Scarlet toward the door, then at the officiant, who stared at his shoes like they had answers. He looked at the guests, who tried not to look back, then at Ethan, whose face was open and terrified and stubborn all at once. Is he in danger? Michael asked, and the question surprised everyone, including himself. Ethan blinked. What? Aaron Pike, Michael said, still quiet. Is he in danger because of this? Because of you being here with me? Scarlet hesitated. It was small. It was fatal. No. Ethan didn't speak. He just held his father's eyes. He didn't need to say the word liar, the silence said it for him. Something in Michael settled. You could see it, the way the muscles around his eyes eased, the way his posture shifted from braced to decided. He nodded once, slow. Then he turned, lifted the microphone from its stand, and faced the room. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, voice even, we're going to pause the ceremony. A collective exhale, half relief, half disappointment, fanned through the hall. Scarlet reached for him. Michael. He stepped away. Not cruelly. Not theatrically. Just enough. I'm going to ask everyone to give us a few minutes, he continued. Please help yourselves to the refreshments. People stood in awkward clusters, unsure whether to clap, no, hug, definitely no, or pretend this was normal, impossible. The quartet started a soft, shapeless tune that wasn't in their set list but felt like a bridge to somewhere safer. Michael set the mic down, then turned to Ethan. Come with me. Ethan nodded, the adrenaline that had held him up draining all at once. His hands shook. He curled them into his palms and followed. Scarlet took a step to block their path. If you walk away now, Michael, you'll regret it. You'll regret listening to a child over the woman you love. Michael looked at her for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle enough to hurt. I'll regret not listening to the truth. He moved past her. Ethan did, too, refusing to flinch when her shoulder brushed his. As they reached the side door that led to a small anteroom, Ethan glanced back once. Scarlet stood alone in the aisle, veil shimmering under the lights, bouquet abandoned at her feet. The crowd didn't seem to know whether to look at her or anywhere else. Ethan followed his father through the door. It clicked shut behind them, sealing the hall on the other side. And in the quiet that fell, the first siren, distant, questioning, threaded the edge of the evening. Chapter 4, The Evidence. The small anteroom smelled faintly of lemon polish and old carpet. A coat rack stood in the corner, unused, a relic from some other time. The noise from the wedding hall was muffled by the thick wooden door, but the tension followed them in like smoke. Michael closed the door gently behind them, his movements slow, deliberate. Ethan stood in the middle of the room, his phone still clutched in his hand. For the first time since he'd spoken up, the full weight of what he'd done seemed to land on his shoulders. His breathing was uneven, his face, pale. Michael didn't speak right away. He crossed to the small table in the corner, where a pitcher of water and 2 glasses sat untouched. He poured one, then another, as though buying time. He handed one to Ethan. Ethan didn't take it. Michael set the glass down. Start from the beginning. Ethan swallowed, forcing himself to steady his voice. I didn't go looking for anything, Dad. I swear. It started with the letter. Michael's eyes narrowed. The one you mentioned in there. Ethan nodded. It came about a week ago. Big white envelope. No return address, but it had a correctional facility stamp. Addressed to Mrs. Aaron Pike. The mailman asked me to sign for it. Michael frowned. Why didn't you give it to Scarlet? I did, Ethan said, his jaw tightening. I gave it to her in the kitchen. She looked at it, went white as a sheet, and told me it must have been a mistake. Then she asked me to hand it back so she could return to sender. Michael took that in, his expression unreadable. I didn't think much of it, Ethan continued. But later, I saw her outside by the trash bin, tearing it up. Not opening it, just ripping it into pieces, shoving it deep under the coffee grounds. Michael's gaze stayed fixed on him, but something in his jaw flexed. And that's when you decided to investigate? Ethan took a breath. No. That's when I got curious. I took a piece out of the trash after she went back inside. The envelope corner still had the return address. State Correctional Facility, Everside County. Michael leaned back slightly, crossing his arms. I googled it, Ethan said, and the name Aaron Pike came up in the inmate database. And when I clicked his profile, he pulled his phone up and tapped the screen, swiping to the saved image. There she was. Visiting him. 4 times. Michael didn't look at the phone yet. He just said, go on. I didn't want to believe it, Ethan said. I thought maybe she was helping a friend. Volunteering or something. But then I looked him up in the county court records. Another swipe. Aggravated fraud. 2 counts. He's serving 6 years. And Scarlet? Michael's voice was low, almost flat. Ethan tapped to open the marriage certificate. Scarlet Lane. Married to Aaron Pike. Ceremony date, 2 years ago. No divorce filings anywhere I could find. And trust me, I checked. Every county she's lived in. He hesitated, then added, I even went to the library. Asked the reference desk how to search public records. The librarian showed me this online index that covers multiple counties. Nothing, Dad. No divorce, no annulment. Michael finally took the phone from him. He looked at the document, the official stamp, the signatures. He swiped to the photos, each one more damning than the last. The courthouse steps. The courthouse lobby. The visitor logs. For a moment, Michael said nothing. He set the phone down on the table, face up, as though it might burn him if he kept holding it. Ethan broke the silence. I didn't want to ruin your wedding. But I couldn't just let it happen without telling you. Michael ran a hand over his face. You realize what you've done out there? People are talking. This will be everywhere by tomorrow. I know, Ethan said, his voice cracking. But would you rather hear it from me now, or from a lawyer later? That landed. Michael's shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of him. He sank into one of the chairs, staring at nothing for a long moment. Ethan sat opposite him. There's more. Michael's head came up. More. I think she's been moving money, Ethan said quietly. Little bits at a time. She's asked you for cash before, right? For wedding expenses. Did she ever give you receipts? Michael's mind raced back, dress deposits, caterer installments, vendor holding fees. No, there had never been receipts. He had trusted her. Completely. She told me not to mention it to you, Ethan said, but 2 weeks ago she asked me to help her carry a box to her car. Said it was decorations for the reception. But when I tripped and it spilled, there were stacks of cash inside. Like, way more than decorations cost. Michael's breath came slower now, heavier. Why didn't you tell me then? Because I thought maybe I was imagining things. Or maybe it wasn't my place. But after I found all this, he gestured to the phone. I couldn't keep quiet. Michael picked up the phone again, scrolling through the evidence as if hoping a different conclusion might appear if he looked hard enough. But the images didn't change. The dates didn't change. The reality didn't change. A knock at the door broke the heavy stillness. Robert's voice came through, muffled. Mike, you okay in there? Michael didn't answer. Ethan stayed silent. After a moment, Robert tried again. She's asking to speak to you. Says she can explain. Michael stood slowly, his expression carved from stone. He opened the door just enough to see Robert. Not yet. Robert nodded, stepping back without pushing. All right. I'll keep the guests distracted. Michael shut the door again and turned back to Ethan. If everything you've shown me is true, and I believe it is, then she's committed fraud. At the very least, she lied about her marital status. He stopped himself, shaking his head. Ethan's voice was small now. What are you going to do? Michael stared at the phone one more time before setting it down for good. First, I'm going to make sure you're safe. Then I'm going to make sure she can't hurt us. Ethan hesitated. Do you think she's dangerous? Michael didn't answer directly. He walked to the corner, pulled his own phone from his jacket pocket, and unlocked it. His thumb hovered over the keypad. You're calling her? Ethan asked. Michael shook his head. No, he began dialing. I'm calling the police. Ethan's breath caught. Now. Now, Michael said, his voice steady. Before she has a chance to leave. Before this turns into something worse. As he pressed the phone to his ear, Ethan sat back in his chair, heart pounding. Somewhere beyond the door, the hum of polite conversation carried on, unaware that the wedding had just turned into the prelude to a criminal investigation. Michael's voice was calm when the dispatcher answered. Yes, this is Michael Harris. I need to report an incident, possible fraud and concealment of marital status. The person is here now. Yes. I can wait until an officer arrives. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, relief and fear mixing in equal measure. This wasn't the evening anyone had planned. But it might just be the one that saved them both. Chapter 5, The Bride's Reaction. Scarlet stood alone at the mouth of the aisle, veil shimmering like a net cast over calm water that had just been told a storm was coming. The bouquet lay at her feet where it had fallen, white petals bruised and scattered under 100 careful shoes. For a count of 3, she did not move. Her stillness was so complete it looked like poise. Then the performance began. She inhaled, long, theatrical, and let a tremble ride the exhale. When she lifted her face, the room met eyes that had learned exactly how much gloss made a plea look honest. "Everyone," she said, voice steadying on the microphone the MC had abandoned, "I owe you an apology." She smiled small, chastened. Weddings bring out old ghosts. Misunderstandings. She spread her hands, palms innocent. "But I love Michael. That's the only truth that matters tonight." A sympathetic murmur rolled over the front rows. People wanted instructions on how to feel, she offered a neat script. From the side, the maid of honor, Tessa, stepped closer, tugging discreetly at Scarlet's elbow. "What's the plan?" she whispered, smile pasted on. "Stay with me," Scarlet whispered back without moving her lips. "We keep them calm." The string quartet, grateful for direction, slid into a soft, neutral melody, musical anesthesia. The MC hovered near the stage with a brittle pageant smile, mouthing "wrap it up" to no one in particular. Scarlet kept her tone tender. Teenagers are passionate. Protective. A little laugh, the kind you use to soften a blow. Ethan is a good kid with a big heart. He's confused. The word hung there, an easy label the room could pin to the messy board. Confused. It made everything less jagged. From the third row, a woman called out, "So you're not married?" The word sounded more hopeful than accusatory. Scarlet didn't blink. "I'm not in a marriage," she said, and it was technically true in the way technicalities are weapons when you need them to be. "My past is complicated, but not dishonest." She let her voice threaten to break, just on the edge. "I should have shared more with Michael earlier. That's on me." Tessa squeezed her elbow, approval or warning, even she didn't know. Scarlet's heart thudded a clean, hard rhythm, tempo, tempo, tempo. "Keep them." By minutes. She slid her hand into the bodice pocket sewn inside the dress, not standard, she'd insisted, pulled out her phone, and lowered the mic. With a bright smile for the crowd, she angled her face toward Tessa and hissed, "Text Carter." "Now." Tessa, still smiling, typed. "Where?" She thumbed. "North Lot." 5 minutes, Scarlet shot back, then turned her attention to the hall again. "If you would all give Michael and me a moment," she said sweetly, "we'll be right back to celebrate with you. Please, enjoy the canapés. The crab ones are divine." Laughter, nervous and relieved. A release valve twisting open. She stepped off the dais. A groomsman, stocky, kind eyes, moved automatically to retrieve the bouquet. Scarlet stopped him with a look that made him feel like he'd just picked up a crown he wasn't worthy to touch. He froze, set it back down, cheeks reddening. At the back, near the double doors, 2 venue attendants conferred in low voices about whether, pausing the ceremony, required a refund. A cousin filmed discreetly behind a pillar. An aunt whispered, "Poor thing," to another aunt who answered, "Or poor him." Scarlet's smile didn't crack as she drifted down the aisle, Tessa in tow, collecting small reassurances with eye contact. "You believe me, don't you? You want the fairy tale, right?" She reached the corridor just beyond the doors. The hum of the hall dimmed. The air was cooler here, smelling faintly of bleach and carpet glue. Scarlet's smile fell off her face like a mask unhooked. "Okay," she said, voice snapping to a different register. "Find Michael." Tessa blinked. "He told Robert he wants a minute." "Great," Scarlet said. "We'll give him 30 seconds. She took Tessa's phone, typing fast. "Side exit by kitchen. Bring car around." "Carter's not going to park in the fire lane," Tessa muttered. "He will today," Scarlet said. "Or I'll find someone who will." She shoved the phone back and strode toward the service hallway, heels ticking like a metronome. At the turn, she paused, poise snapping back on as Robert appeared, hands up in a peaceable surrender. "Scarlet," he said carefully. "They just need a little privacy." "Of course," she purred, touching his sleeve, fingertips light as ash. "I don't want a scene, Robert. I only want to fix this." She tilted her head, stage whisper dropping to confide. "Ethan is struggling. You know how kids are. I promise you, once Michael and I talk, this will look very different." Robert's eyes showed the ache of a decent man trying not to be used as a prop. "I'll let him know you're waiting." "Thank you." She watched him go, smile dissolving the instant he turned. The kitchen door swung, releasing a burst of garlic and steam. A caterer hustled past with a tray of tiny tarts. Scarlet reached, plucked one, and took a bite like she owned the oxygen in the room. She didn't taste it. She was counting. 4 minutes. He's calling them. A siren floated somewhere far off, a thin silver thread backstitching the evening. Too soon. Maybe not for them. For her, it was already late. She pivoted into the staff corridor, found the narrow door to the rear lot. It was locked. She rattled it once, then rang the push bar with the heel of her hand. "Excuse me," she called to no one, voice flipping to harmless hostess. "Could someone?" A dishwasher poked his head out. "That exit's kept locked. Management policy." She leaned in, smile laser-focused. "And if I said I'd tip you $200 to forget you saw me?" He hesitated. The second siren, closer now, shaved the edge off his principles. He fished for keys. "Make it 3. She had cash. She always did. She shot Tessa a look, "Pay the man." Tessa fumbled her clutch, cheeks flaming. He popped the lock. Cool night air kissed their faces. "Thanks, darling," Scarlet said, already moving. The lot beyond was a grid of gleaming rentals and late-model sedans. At the far corner, a black SUV idled, headlights off, driver's arm out the window tapping a cigarette. Carter. Good. She slipped into the open, then halted. A figure separated from the shadow by the ice machine, Robert, again, faster than he looked, with the venue manager at his shoulder. "Scarlet," the manager said, tone polite with steel under it. "We'll need you to remain inside." Her smile returned like a blade being sheathed. "I was getting some air. It's very warm." "I understand," the manager said. But the groom asked that everyone remain in the main areas. "Everyone?" She glanced meaningfully at the open door, the complicit dishwasher. "Or just me?" Robert's hand stayed visible, palms out. "Please. Don't make this harder." For a heartbeat, something fierce flashed through her eyes, the living thing under the costume. "Of course," she said sweetly, stepping back, buying time by conceding an inch. "Whatever Michael needs." She wasn't going to run. Not yet. Running looked like guilt. Running forfeited the crowd, and the crowd was a weapon. She slid the mask on again and moved with them, back through the corridor, into the hum. The hall had grown louder, the way rooms do when people are trying not to look terrified. The quartet played something cheerful and forgettable. Champagne flowed more freely than the truth. Scarlet stepped into the center aisle as if nothing had splintered. "Friends," she called lightly, claiming the room with the ease of a practiced MC, "thank you for your patience. As we wait for Michael, I'd love to invite you to the photo booth. The more, the merrier." She clapped once. "Let's make some memories." It was a masterful redirect. Laughter bubbled, grateful for orders. People rose, relieved to have a task that wasn't, watch a life unravel. While they moved, Scarlet fished her phone out again. One new text from Carter, front loop clearer. 2 minutes max. She shot back, stand by. Then she opened another thread, AP, and her thumb hovered. The last message was 3 days old. "We're close. Trust me." She typed, "Change of plan. Don't contact me." She didn't send it. Not yet. Across the room, a side door clicked. Michael stepped back into the hall with Ethan beside him. Conversation fell in waves, like a stadium hush before a penalty kick. Scarlet's smile brightened as if none of the last 15 minutes existed. "There you are," she said, taking one step, two, toward him. "Michael, sweetheart." He didn't meet her halfway. He stopped near the stage, eyes not unkind, but unreachable. "Scarlet," he said, voice carrying without a microphone. "We need to pause the reception." A murmur, disappointed and thrilled all at once. She nodded, magnanimous. "Of course. We can tell everyone there's been a family emergency." He held her gaze. "We will tell them the truth." The room thinned around those words. She felt it, the way people lean subconsciously toward heat. She closed the distance, stopping an arm's length away. Any closer might look like pleading, any farther like retreat. "Then let me speak," she said softly, just for him, while smiling for everyone. "Let me explain to you first, and then to them." Michael's eyes flicked to the doors, then to Ethan, then back to her. "There'll be time to explain," he said. "With the police present." The mask fissured. Not a crack so much as a hairline, visible only if you knew where to look. She re-smiled over it. "Police? Michael, that's dramatic." "It's appropriate," he said. Ethan stood solid at his side. He had put his hands in his pockets to hide the shake, and he was failing. Scarlet clocked it, filed it away, a weakness she could step on later. She softened her posture. "I understand why you're scared," she said, weaving her voice for Michael alone, wrapping it in the velvet of us. "Let me fix that. Come with me. 10 minutes. We'll come back out, hold hands, and start this over." He didn't answer. Somewhere outside, a siren dopplered, louder now, threads of sound snagging on the edges of conversation. People turned their heads toward the glass doors as if they could see down the street with their ears. Scarlet heard it, too. Her timeline narrowed to a pinhole. She made a choice. "All right," she said brightly, flipping to host again. "While we sort a small misunderstanding, please enjoy the open bar. Tonight is still about love." She threw the last word like a glitter bomb, distracting, coating everything, impossible to clean. She pivoted, drifting toward the side aisle, casual as sunlight. At the corner she bent to adjust her shoe, fingers fast under the veil, prying a tiny flash drive from a hidden seam in the hem and slipping it into her palm. She palmed it to Tessa without looking. Tessa nearly dropped it. What is this? Insurance, Scarlet breathed. If anyone asks, you've never seen me touch it. Tessa's voice wobbled. Scar, are you in trouble? Scarlet's eyes held hers a fraction too long. Only if I lose. She straightened and flowed on, stopping to hug an aunt who needed the comfort of being chosen, to kiss a coworker's cheek, to press living apologies into the hands of people who wanted to be persuaded. She harvested nods, sympathy, confusion, the soft currency of doubt. At the rear doors, the venue manager waited with a security guard who had been summoned from somewhere quiet. The guard's stance was neutral but decisive. Ma'am, until the police arrive, we're asking everyone to remain inside. Scarlet beamed. Of course, officer. I'm not, he stopped. Yes, ma'am. She drifted 2 steps away, then 2 back, pacing a neat little rectangle like a caged cat that had memorized the map. The siren's song thickened, now clearly turning into the driveway. A child clapped, trucks, before his mother shushed him. Scarlet's phone buzzed. Carter, out front. Can't wait. She typed, 1 minute. She scanned the room. The dishwasher, 3 tables in, tried not to meet her eye. The cousin with the camera pretended to film the cake and filmed her instead. The quartet's violist had gone sheet white and played on, as if compliance was a spell. Scarlet looked back to Michael one last time. She request-coded a message into a smile, save me, choose me, make this stop, and layered it over the room so anyone could read what they needed to. He didn't move. Something inside her lifted its chin. Fine. She slipped sideways through a cluster of guests admiring a floral arrangement, pivoted behind the cake table, and ducked into the short service corridor leading to the front loop. 2 breaths later she was at the glass vestibule, heat flushing her skin as she saw the black SUV nosed under the awning, hazards blinking in nervous Morse code. She reached for the door. Ma'am, the security guard said from behind her, breath quick, he'd followed. Please don't. She smiled over her shoulder, fingers on the bar. Then don't watch. She pushed. Outside, blue strobes washed the building. A patrol car turned into the drive, engine heavy, command unmistakable. The guard's hand hovered, duty wrestling with momentum. The MC gasped. Someone said, "Oh." And Scarlet, framed in the doorway between the cool, curated world of the wedding and the hard fluorescent spill of the parking lot, didn't run and didn't freeze. She calculated. She adjusted her veil with a tiny, perfect gesture and took one precise step into the light. Chapter 6, The Father's Decision. The blue strobe lights from the police car pulsed against the glass walls of the hall, painting everyone in brief flashes of cold, unreal light. The hum of voices had dwindled to a low, uneasy murmur. Every guest seemed to know the moment was no longer just an interruption to a wedding, it was the kind of turning point people would talk about for years. Michael stood at the center of the aisle, his back straight but his hands curled into fists at his sides. Ethan stood beside him, still close enough to feel the low heat of his father's anger, not at him, but at the situation. Scarlet was still by the open vestibule door, half in, half out, her veil moving with the draft from outside. She hadn't run, but her stance screamed calculation. The security guard hovered 2 steps behind her, clearly aware that one wrong move could tip the whole room into chaos. 2 police officers entered, their presence shifting the air. One was tall, broad-shouldered, his eyes scanning the hall like a man reading a map. The other, younger, kept a hand near his belt but spoke first. Michael Harris? Michael raised a hand. Here. His voice carried, steady enough to be heard in the farthest corner. The tall officer stepped forward. We understand there's a matter that needs our attention. Scarlet turned toward them, her tone instantly warm, friendly, like she was greeting a pair of old family friends. "Officers, I think there's been a misunderstanding. This is a private event, a happy day." She smiled like the word happy might hypnotize them. Michael didn't let her finish. "The misunderstanding," he said, "is that she was free to marry me." The murmurs in the crowd swelled, then hushed again. Scarlet's smile froze for a fraction too long before she recovered. "Michael, we can talk about this in private." "No," Michael said, the firmness in his voice snapping the last thread of doubt in anyone listening. "We're not doing this in shadows." The younger officer glanced between them. "Sir, can you clarify the complaint?" Michael took a breath, then spoke with the measured cadence of a man who had already made his choice. "This woman, Scarlet Lane, is legally married to another man. His name is Aaron Pike. He is currently serving a prison sentence in Everside County. I have evidence, photos, court documents, and a marriage certificate, showing she has not divorced or annulled that marriage. She has been representing herself to me, to my family, and to this venue as a single woman." Scarlet's head shook in small, practiced disbelief. "That's not the whole story." "It's the only story that matters," Michael cut in. "And I'm pressing charges for fraud and any related offenses." Gasps fluttered through the hall. Ethan didn't move, but inside, relief swelled like a deep breath after weeks underwater. His father wasn't hesitating. Not anymore. The tall officer nodded once. "Sir, do you have that evidence on you?" Ethan stepped forward, phone in hand. "I do." His voice was quiet, but it carried in the silent room. Scarlet's eyes flicked to him, the friendliness gone, replaced by something sharper, colder. "You've been digging into my life for weeks. You call that protecting your father?" "I call it telling the truth," Ethan said. Michael took the phone from his son and handed it to the officer. "It's all there. Dates, places, everything you need to verify." The officers moved a few steps away to review the files, speaking in low tones. Scarlet stood very still, her hands folded lightly in front of her like she was posing for a photograph. But her jaw was tight. Michael turned toward her. For a moment, there was no anger in his eyes, only exhaustion. "You could have told me," he said. "Whatever the truth was, we could have handled it. But you didn't trust me enough to let me see who you really are." Scarlet's voice softened, a last-ditch effort. "I didn't want to lose you." "You already did," Michael said. The officers returned. "Sir, we'll need to take her in for questioning." Scarlet lifted her chin. "Am I under arrest?" The tall officer's reply was calm, procedural. "You're being detained pending investigation. You have the right to remain silent." She held up a hand. "I know my rights." The charm was gone now, replaced by a brittle steel. As the officers escorted her toward the door, she glanced back, not at Michael, but at Ethan. Her eyes held his for half a second, a silent warning or a promise. He couldn't tell which. Michael's hand came to rest on his son's shoulder. "Come on," he said quietly. "We're done here." They stepped aside as Scarlet was led past them. The hall seemed to exhale, the tension draining but leaving behind an aftertaste of shock. Guests shifted in their seats, some standing, others whispering. A few reached out to touch Michael's arm in quiet solidarity. At the threshold, Scarlet looked over her shoulder one last time. Her voice was low but sharp enough to cut through the space between them. "This isn't over." Michael didn't respond. The door closed behind her, and for the first time that night, Michael felt the weight of the decision settle in. He had chosen truth over illusion, and it had cost him the future he thought he wanted. But standing there with his son beside him, he realized it had given him something better, certainty. Ethan looked up at him. "You okay?" Michael nodded slowly. "Yeah. I am now." The sirens faded into the distance, carrying Scarlet and her secrets away into the night. Chapter 7, The Call to the Police. The police car door closed with a heavy, mechanical thud. Scarlet sat in the back seat, hands in her lap, the faint smell of vinyl and stale coffee settling around her. The cuffs were in the officer's belt, not on her wrists, not yet. That small freedom was enough for her to sit perfectly still, chin up, veil trailing over her shoulder like it still meant something. From her seat, she could see Michael through the glass. He was still inside, speaking with the younger officer who held Ethan's phone. Every so often, the officer nodded and tapped the screen, swiping through images. Scarlet's jaw tightened. That phone, that single, smug rectangle, was her undoing. The tall officer slid into the driver's seat, adjusting the radio. A call crackled through about a fender bender 2 streets over. He answered, "Unit 4 en route," then looked at Scarlet in the rearview mirror. "You understand this is just a detainment. You'll have a chance to explain at the station." She smiled faintly. "I've always been good at explaining." Inside, the hum of conversation was starting to swell again. Some guests gathered near the buffet, speaking in low tones, others clustered in corners, deciding whether to stay or slip out quietly. Robert was circulating like a damage control diplomat, assuring people that Michael was fine, that they'd get an update soon. Michael, however, wasn't mingling. He stood with Ethan near the stage, speaking in quiet, deliberate sentences. "You're going to see people post about this," he said. "Some of them will get the facts wrong. Don't respond. Don't get pulled into arguments online. We let the truth handle itself." Ethan nodded. He felt drained, like all the adrenaline that had fueled him was leaking away. "I didn't think it would go like this." Michael's gaze softened. "Neither did I. But you did the right thing." Near the entrance, the younger officer stepped outside to radio in the situation. Through the glass, Michael caught a glimpse of Scarlet in the back seat of the squad car. She was smiling, not broadly, but in that tight, unreadable way that suggested she wasn't beaten yet. Michael's phone buzzed in his pocket. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something told him to answer. "This is Michael Harris." A man's voice, low, tense. "You don't know me, but you need to hear this. Scarlet's not just married to Aaron Pike. She's been helping him move money. If you've got accounts in your name together, check them. Now." Michael's stomach dropped. "Who is this?" The line went dead. He looked at Ethan. "Stay here." Outside, the air was cooler, and the flashing blue lights painted the pavement in shifting shadows. He walked toward the car, stopping just short of the door. The tall officer noticed him and stepped out. "Sir, we'll be taking her in shortly." Michael nodded. "One more question before you go. If I tell you there may be ongoing financial crimes connected to her and her husband, what happens?" The officer's expression shifted, less procedural, more alert. "Then this just became a larger case. Do you have evidence?" "Not yet," Michael said. "But I'll get it." Scarlet leaned toward the glass, her voice carrying through the barely open window. "Michael, you're making a mistake. Whatever you think you know, it's not the truth." He met her gaze without blinking. "Then you can tell the truth at the station." The officer closed the window. Back inside, the guests were starting to collect their things. A few came up to shake Michael's hand, murmur sympathetic words, or awkwardly joke about one for the memoirs. Ethan stayed close, watching the door as the squad car began to roll away. Scarlet didn't look back. Michael exhaled slowly, pulling his phone out again. He dialed a number from memory, not a friend, not family, but his bank's fraud department. "Yes," he said when a voice answered. "I need to review all recent withdrawals and transfers from my accounts. Effective immediately, freeze anything with Scarlet Lane's name on it." The officer's warning echoed in his head. "Do you have evidence?" "Not yet." But he knew where to start. And as the red and blue lights faded into the night, Michael decided that this was no longer just about stopping a wedding. This was about dismantling whatever game Scarlet and Aaron Pike had been running, before it caught anyone else in its net. Chapter 8, The Ending. The Harris house was quiet in a way that felt almost artificial, like the silence after a power outage. Michael stood in the doorway for a moment, letting the familiar shape of his living room steady him. The soft amber glow from a single table lamp cut gentle pools of light across the couch, the coffee table, the worn rug. Ethan slipped past him, dropping into the couch with the kind of heaviness only exhaustion could produce. He didn't turn on the TV, didn't reach for his phone, just sat there, staring at nothing. Michael hung his jacket over the back of a chair and loosened his tie. "Hungry?" Ethan shook his head. Michael went to the kitchen anyway, filling 2 glasses of water and bringing one back to the living room. He set it in front of his son. Ethan took it, mumbled, "Thanks," and drank. For a few minutes, they didn't speak. It wasn't awkward, it was necessary. The night's chaos needed space to settle. Finally, Michael sat down beside him. "You holding up?" Ethan exhaled. "I think so. Just, feels weird. Like I'm watching a movie about us instead of actually living it." Michael gave a tired half-smile. "Yeah. Surreal's a good word for it." The phone on the coffee table buzzed. Michael picked it up, the display read, "Bank Security." He answered. "Mr. Harris," the voice on the other end said, "we've reviewed your accounts. There were several unusual cash withdrawals in the past 3 months, all just under the reporting threshold. We also found a pending wire transfer request, $18,500, to an account in the name of Aaron Pike." Michael's jaw clenched. "Cancel it. Block all outgoing transfers until I come in person to verify. And please, flag anything with her name on it." "Already done, sir," the banker replied. "We'll also provide a statement for the police." Michael thanked them, ended the call, and set the phone down. Ethan watched him. "So it's real." She was moving money to him. "Looks that way," Michael said quietly. "You stopped me from stepping into something a lot worse than a bad marriage." Ethan looked away, blinking quickly. "I didn't want to hurt you." "You didn't," Michael said. "You protected me." There was a knock at the door, a firm, measured rap. Michael exchanged a glance with Ethan before getting up. Through the peephole, he saw the younger police officer from earlier, standing with a folder in hand. "Evening, sir," the officer said when Michael opened the door. "Just wanted to drop this off, our preliminary report. We've already confirmed her marriage to Aaron Pike and her visitor logs at the prison. The financial angle you mentioned is now part of the case. She's not talking, but we've got enough to hold her for now." Michael took the folder. "Thank you." The officer gave a short nod. "We'll be in touch. And, for what it's worth, your son did the right thing tonight. Not everyone would have had the guts." Michael glanced over his shoulder at Ethan, who was pretending not to listen but clearly was. "Yeah," he said. I know. When the door closed, Michael set the folder on the table without opening it. Tomorrow, he said. Tonight we just breathe. They tried. Ethan eventually stretched out on the couch, pulling the throw blanket over himself. Michael watched him for a moment, realizing how much of the boy's composure tonight had been bravado over nerves. The kind of bravery that doesn't come without cost. In the kitchen, Michael poured himself a cup of coffee, even though it was nearly midnight. He stood at the window, the streetlight's glow spilling across the empty road. Somewhere out there, Scarlet was sitting in a holding cell, calculating her next move. He knew women like her didn't just disappear, they adapted, found angles, came back when people stopped watching. The thought didn't scare him. Not anymore. He heard movement behind him. Ethan was sitting up, rubbing his eyes. "Can't sleep," he said. Michael set down his coffee. "Come here." Ethan crossed the room, and Michael pulled him into a hug, solid, unhurried. "Whatever comes next, we face it together. No secrets." Ethan nodded against his shoulder. "Deal." They went back to the couch and, without discussing it, put on an old action movie they'd seen a dozen times. The familiar noise filled the space, pushing the silence back into the corners. Halfway through, Michael's phone buzzed again. A text, unknown number. "Enjoyed the show tonight. Shame we didn't get to finish the vows." No name. No signature. Michael stared at it for a beat before locking the screen and setting the phone face down. He didn't need to tell Ethan, not tonight. Tomorrow, maybe. For now, he let the movie play. He let Ethan laugh at the same ridiculous chase scene they always laughed at. He let the night turn, slowly, from the chaos of the hall to the calm of home. Outside, the street stayed empty. The blue and red lights were gone. But somewhere, he knew, the game wasn't over. Michael wasn't afraid of that anymore. Because this time, he wasn't playing alone.